I guess kind of wrapping this up, Joseph, if you want to, do you have any thoughts on where we go in 2024, either with interest rates or economy, or any thoughts on where we go in 2024?
So I think we have to be careful, like I mentioned, so to make sure that we don't color our judgment of the present and the future based on the past. So I think going forward over the next few years, the future will not look like the past. And the big difference has to do with two things. First, it has to do with the politics and culture of the government. So if you think back, let's say 20 years ago in Congress, you would have a lot of people who were known as fiscal hawks and they would want a balanced budget.
Yep.
Those guys are all gone. Today, what we have is, I want to spend a lot of money, but I'm going to disagree on who I spend it on. You can have people who want to spend it on defense, want to spend it on some other corporation, pharmaceutical company, or something like that. Or you can have other people who want to spend it on, say, forgiving student loans or childcare and stuff like that. The debate is never about how much money to spend, but always about who to spend it on. That is a paradigm shift in how I think the world will work going forward. If we have persistent fiscal deficits, which we do, the bias is going to be for higher inflation and higher asset prices. It also means that it's much more difficult to have severe recessions because the moment we have a severe recession, well, the policymakers, the public already understands the
Yeah.
government can give me money, right? Why
Yeah.
don't you just
Woohoo!
give me money? You can't take that.
Yeah.
You can't put that genie back into the bottle.
No.
So that's really, really bad for the country longer term. But we have to play with the cards that we're dealt with. So going forward, I would expect inflation to be higher, asset prices to be higher, and for there to be, I guess, it's very difficult for me to see severe recession going forward.
Yeah.
Now, the second
Inflation
thing,
is a feature, not a bug. It's something I've said, unfortunately.
it looks that way, right? The second thing that I think is really changing that we haven't seen before is the demographic aging. So for all of history, we've had a growing population. Now that all changed in the 1980s. In the 1980s, we had smaller families, and that really didn't seem apparent until today, where our workforce isn't growing at the same level at the same rate that it used to. Now, there's a very famous economist. His name is Goodhart, Charles Goodhart, and he has a very interesting thesis that I believe is valid. And that is when you have an aging population, that's inflationary. Why is it inflationary? Well, let's imagine for a moment that everyone in the city retires. Okay, they all have savings, they have Social Security to spend, but who's going to do all the work? So your demand doesn't change. These guys, retirees, continue to go to restaurants, go to groceries. Maybe they don't buy fancy cars, but they still, have everyday demand. But the supply of goods and services goes to zero when you retire because you're simply not working. So there is that fundamental imbalance between supply and demand. We're going forward. We have a lot of people, continue to consume, demand persistent, supply not there because they're not working anymore. And that's really going to change the world in the coming years. And I think that's going to make wages stay high because labor is going to become more scarce. We're already seeing signs of this everywhere, right? We have this big strike at the UAW. We have strikes Delta, United, just everywhere. It's labor realizing that they have power, and that's going to
Yep.
continue. And of course, that's going to make the things that we buy more expensive as well. So
Yep.
again, I think we have a decade of higher than expected inflation. The world,
A decade of higher expected inflation.
yeah.
Nice. Okay.
So so
Yep.
yeah, I think that's
It,
going to be the future will not look like the past, is what I'm saying.
I love that. Joseph, where can people find you? Where should we send them to follow you?
Yeah, so if you're interested in learning about so I provide weekly updates on what's happening in the financial markets at my YouTube channel at Joseph Wang. If you're interested in learning more about how the financial markets work, check out my book. And if you're interested in, I guess, a bit more sophisticated take on what's happening in the markets, you can check out my weekly subscription service at fedguy.com, where I write research on the markets. And of course, Twitter, fedguy12.
Guys, do me a favor, send them some love. We got it almost an hour of his time today to help us out. Joseph, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for inviting me.
You got it.